Gods of death have a major PR problem these days, right? I mean, you watch Hollywood movies like The Mummy Returns or The Pyramid, and you'll see Anubis portrayed as this violent, power-hungry villain, just a terrifying monster lurking in the shadows. But actually, scratch that, the truth is wildly different. Welcome to this explainer where we're going to unwrap the real mythology behind the jackal-headed god of ancient Egypt. Because far from being a chaotic, evil entity, he was actually one of the most vital, respected, and honestly comforting figures in the entire ancient world. Pop culture really wants you to think of Anubis as a villain plotting humanity's doom. But in reality, ancient Egyptians essentially considered him the god of minding his own business. He was the ultimate impartial guide. Think about it. If it weren't for Anubis, ancient souls would have had to navigate the terrifying underworld completely alone. Their graves would be left totally unprotected, and they'd have to figure out their own internal judgment. Instead, Anubis was a stoic guardian who quite literally looked out for you when no one else could. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for demystifying the ultimate divine caretaker. First, 1. The misunderstood death god. Then, 2. Creating the first mummy. Next up, 3. Guardian of the scales. And finally, 4. The price of worship. Section 1. The misunderstood death god, busting the villain trope. Right out the gate, there is just a sheer amount of ancient divine drama behind his birth. In the most prominent myths, Anubis is the illegitimate son of the god Osiris and the goddess Nephthys. Nephthys actually disguised herself to seduce Osiris, but then, well, she was absolutely terrified of what her tyrannical, chaotic husband Set would do if he found out. So she abandoned the infant Anubis in the marshes. But here is the incredible part. Isis, the wife of Osiris, discovered the truth, and instead of being consumed by jealousy, she showed immense compassion. She found the child, protected him from Set, and raised Anubis as her own. And because of this, Anubis became fiercely loyal to both Isis and Osiris. So Anubis grows up and takes on his iconic form, a man with the head of a jackal or an ancient wolf, draped in this pitch-black fur that symbolized the fertile soil of the Nile and the mystery of death. Which begs a fantastic paradox. Jackals were known scavengers. They were notorious for digging up the shallow graves of early Egyptians and eating the corpses. So why on earth would the ancients make a grave-robbing animal the ultimate protector of the dead? Well, the answer lies in this classic ancient Egyptian magical concept: fight fire with fire. To protect against a terrible threat, you adopt its image. By taking the creature that was the biggest physical threat to a buried body and elevating it to a divine guardian, the Egyptians were fighting like with like. They basically turned their greatest fear into their greatest protector. The jackal determined the fate of your physical body in the dirt, so the jackal god would determine the fate of your soul in the heavens. Makes perfect sense when you think about it. Moving on to Section 2, creating the first mummy, the ultimate embalmer. It all stems from a massive cosmic tragedy. Set, that tyrannical god we mentioned earlier, betrayed and murdered his brother Osiris, literally chopping his body into pieces and scattering them all across Egypt. Isis tracked down the pieces, and Anubis stepped up to perform a groundbreaking ritual. He meticulously reassembled his father, creating the very first mummy, through a series of intense, sacred steps that became the gold standard for all Egyptian funerary rites. The body was washed, organs were removed, except for the heart, which was the seat of the soul. Then the body was wrapped in linen, followed by the mystical opening of the mouth ceremony to restore the senses for the afterlife, and finally, safe placement in the tomb. And Anubis fiercely protected his work. While he was putting Osiris back together, Set wasn't finished. Set transformed into a leopard and attacked, trying to rip the corpse to shreds. But Anubis absolutely wasn't having it. He stood his ground, grabbed a scorching hot iron rod, beat Set into submission, and then literally flayed the leopard skin right off of him. Anubis wore that spotted skin as a terrifying warning to any evil spirits or tomb robbers. And this brilliantly illustrates why the human priests who attended to the dead in ancient Egypt would wear leopard skins during their rituals. They were channeling the protective power of Anubis. So the really crucial point here is that Anubis was incredibly noble. When Osiris was fully resurrected into the underworld, Anubis did something virtually unheard of in mythology. He unselfishly stepped down. See, Anubis was originally the ruler of the underworld, but he handed the throne over to Osiris so he could focus entirely on his true passion, protecting and guiding the dead without bias. He wasn't in it for glory or status, He just wanted to do his job flawlessly. All right, Section 3, Guardian of the Scales, the ultimate test in the duat.
When you died, Anubis was the one who met you and guided you into the Doat, the perilous underworld. And I do mean perilous. We're talking about navigating past a lake of fire and dodging flesh-eating baboons. But if you survived all that, Anubis led you to the Hall of Truth for the ultimate test of Ma'at. This is the concept of cosmic order and truth, symbolized by a single feather.
Here is how it worked. Anubis would take your heart, which, again, held your soul and all your earthly deeds, and place it on a divine scale opposite the feather of truth. If you lived a decent, balanced life, your heart was light. You passed, and you were escorted to the field of reeds, a paradise of eternal bliss. But if you were wicked and selfish, your heart was heavy with sin. In that case, Anubis would calmly hand your heavy heart right over to Ammit, a terrifying demon with the head of a crocodile, the torso of a lion, and the hindquarters of a hippo. Ammit would devour your heart, and your soul would be obliterated from existence entirely. So, no pressure, right?
Because the stakes were literally absolute oblivion, the ancient Egyptians didn't want to leave anything to chance. They were terrified of feeling this test. And that's exactly why they buried their loved ones with the Book of the Dead. Think of it as an afterlife strategy guide or basically a cheat code. It contained the 42 negative confessions, a precise list of sins you had to confidently deny in front of Anubis and the judges to prove your innocence. With Anubis watching those scales, you needed every magical advantage you could get.
Bringing us to Section 4, the price of worship, devotion in the real world.
Anubis was worshipped everywhere, but his absolute epicenter was a place called Sinopolis, which literally translates from Greek to City of the Dog. He was so popular and highly regarded that centuries later, when the Greeks and Romans ruled Egypt, they didn't erase him. Instead, they drew parallels between Anubis and their own messenger god, Hermes, who also guided souls. They actually merged them together into a hybrid deity named Hermanubis. Now that is some serious cultural staying power.
To put that devotion into perspective, 8 million. That is the staggering, almost unbelievable number of mummified dogs, jackals, and foxes found in the catacombs of Saqqara. To earn Anubis's favor and ask for his protection over their deceased relatives, everyday citizens would purchase these mummified animals from priests as votive offerings. There was literally an entire massive industry built around breeding and sacrificing dogs just to honor Anubis. It's a dark reality by modern standards, for sure, but it shows just how desperately they wanted the guardian of the dead on their side.
And you know, despite all his stoic, silent duties, Anubis does have one wildly dramatic, lesser-known myth called the Tale of Two Brothers. Anubis and his younger brother Bata lived peacefully tending the fields together. But Anubis's wife tried to seduce Bata. When Bata refused, she framed him. Enraged and deceived, Anubis nearly killed his brother. Bata fled, hiding his own heart in a cedar tree to survive as an incomplete man. When the tree was cut down years later, Bata died. Realizing the truth, Anubis spent 7 agonizing years searching the world for his brother's heart. He finally found it, resurrected Bata, and together they exposed the wicked wife, with Bata magically transforming into a bull and then a tree just to get the truth out. Justice was served, and Anubis was ultimately rewarded with the throne. It's an epic story of betrayal, brotherly love, and divine justice. Today, we often look at death as this terrifying, lonely abyss. It's the great unknown. But the ancient Egyptians didn't see it that way. They knew exactly who was waiting for them in the dark. So what does this all mean? Well, would you feel better facing the end of your life if you knew a fiercely loyal, totally impartial guardian was standing there, ready to take you by the hand and guide you through the fire? As it turns out, Anubis wasn't the villain of the story. He was the ultimate friend at the end of the world.